The first recorded signs of human life in Nevada date back about 12,500 years to fragments of tools and textiles found near today's Nevada-Utah border. Although science sets a date on human history in the Great Basin, others put no limits on its origins.
There are creation stories that dictate to us that this is where we're from, that we didn't come across the Bering Strait and we didn't migrate into this area. This is a place that we've always been.
Lois Kane is a northern Paiute whose ancestors lived near Fallon, and it's in her homeland that scientists uncovered some of the oldest remnants of human life on the planet. 10,000 years ago, this desert east of Fallon was popular beachfront property along the shrinking Lake Lahontan. In 1940, some sightseers were hiking in the area known as Hidden Cave when they found an ancient burial and storage area. They had stumbled upon one of the most important archaeological discoveries in history. In 1940, archaeologists digging in one of the caves, known as Spirit Cave, came upon the mummified remains of a human. In 1994, scientists determined the mummy was 9,400 years old, more than 3,000 years older than the mummies of Egypt. Wrapped in a rabbit skin blanket, Spirit Caveman was in incredible condition for his age.
His head has hair on it, and he's got skin on his back, and we can tell by looking at the hair that it was fairly fine and wavy, not quite straight, not real thick and coarse, and very well preserved, actually. He was a relatively small man, about 5'4". He was apparently very healthy, but except for he had some very bad abscesses in his teeth, and that may have been what killed him.
Nevada State Museum archaeologist Amy Danzy says Spirit Caveman was probably a senior citizen by standards 9,400 years ago. Scientists estimate he lived to the ripe old age of 45. Danzy is only one of a handful of people who have actually seen the Spirit Cave mummy. Today it's the subject of a custody fight between the Fallon Paiute tribe and the Bureau of Land Management, or BLM. We'll talk more about that later. Although the public is not allowed to see the mummy, the State Museum commissioned artist Sharon Long to make this recreation of his bust based on the skeletal remains. The world's second oldest mummy was uncovered in 1966 at Wizards Beach at Pyramid Lake. Wizards Beach Man was estimated by scientists to be 9,200 years old, and a recreated bust of him was made also. And like Spirit Caveman, the custody of his remains are also in dispute. Both of these men lived off the abundant wildlife provided by Lake Lahontan and the surrounding land. It was a marsh environment that kept a culture alive for at least 500 years.
And they lived out in the open most of the time. They used the caves to store things and to bury the dead. And we have enough examples to indicate that they did care very much for the dead. These burials are very respectful and very thorough. They're very carefully buried, so we know that they had family groups at least. The people from 10,000 years ago, 9,000 years ago, were no different from us today. We cared about our loved ones. We took care when they died. It hurt us. It mattered. We did what we could to ease that pain by doing the right thing. And that hasn't changed. People have not changed very much in the last 10,000 years.
The area where Spirit Caveman was found appears to have been an important, even sacred territory to the ancients.
The archaeologists found spears. They also found projectile points, and this is a broken one. And I'm not calling it an arrowhead because when you find it by itself, you don't know if it was connected to a spear or was it connected to an arrow shaft. So scientists call it projectile points. This one's broken. They found tools, stones to scrape off meat hide. And they even found things like ancient chewing gum.
Today, the BLM conducts educational tours of Hidden Cave and the surrounding area east of Fallon, which is considered to be one of the richest archaeological sites in North America. Thousands of artifacts were found, and after the last excavation in 1980, the site was left as it was on the final day, so visitors could see an archaeological dig in progress. The first major archaeological excavation in the Great Basin began in 1912, about 70 miles north of Hidden Cave, also on the shore of the extinct Lake Lahontan. Humans began using Lovelock Cave for storage and burials about 4,000 years ago, according to the scientific dating of artifacts. About 10,000 items were taken from Lovelock Cave in the first archaeological dig, including some of the most impressive and incredibly preserved Native American artifacts ever. Duck decoys made of tule reed that date back to the year 2000 BC. The art of weaving those decoys is quickly becoming a lost skill within Nevada's native cultures. This film, made in the late 1960s by Nevada anthropologist Margaret Wheat, shows the skill and dexterity needed to create the decoys. The weaver is a well-known Paiute woman, the late Woosie George. Another part of Lovelock Cave's historical importance is the legend of the red-haired giants.
There were supposedly red-headed giants living out on the lake in houseboats, and these houseboats were supposedly lashed together, and the Indians, the red-headed giants, known as the Sitka, they supposedly terrorized the local Paiutes, stealing their children, their women. So ultimately the Paiutes became quite tired of this and gathered together and attacked them, drove them into the cave. The Indians took refuge in the cave, and according to the legend, the Paiutes exterminated them.
Archaeologist Peggy McGluckian also says that so far there's no scientific evidence to support the red-haired giant legend. However, some of the basketry found inside Lovelock Cave has never been found anywhere else, and some scientists do believe that a unique culture went extinct here about 800 years ago. The ancients also left behind some mysterious clues about themselves. They carved and drew on rocks. These petroglyphs show animals, hunters, and sometimes symbols of a world about which today's scientists can only speculate. We do not know who did the artwork or exactly what it means, and the age is also uncertain, although it's believed these petroglyphs at Grimes Point, less than a mile from Hidden Cave, are about 2,000 to 500 years old. Grimes Point is another example of the apparent sacred and practical importance of this area. It resembles an ancient chat room, and for archaeologists, it's a veritable field of dreams, with hundreds of petroglyphs on this small slope of desert.